come into your sitting posture, nice and comfortable. If you can sit forwards for a little while, if your back is okay with that, then do that. Tilt forwards a little bit. Feel that third of a weight of your body actually in your feet. If that's difficult to pick up and it's quite subtle, then for a few moments raise your heels and you'll feel it much more strongly in the balls of your feet. And when you lower your heels down, you don't want to leave them up because you're tightening your calves. Really the ideal focal point for your weight, the sort of center of the dropping of your weight, is just behind the ball of each foot. When we come to standing, that becomes more significant, but may also be more difficult because it's one of those things that we gradually move towards, and our body has to adjust and condition for it to become comfortable. The important thing here is really to feel that your legs are part of what supports your body. And your back and spine support the front of your body. So you could, for instance, think about your rib cage just hanging slightly from the spine. And as you begin to lose some of the tightness and stiffness, particularly in the upper part of your body, the sense of a sort of movement, a flowing movement inwards and downwards, drawing your attention to this stronger feeling within the body, which in the first instance we can think of our skeleton. So as the muscles of your chest and upper back and shoulders soften and your shoulders begin to drop, you become more aware of the rib cage. So it's worth noting these aspects of how our body supports itself without having to stiffen up, without having to tighten. Now just rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. And then going up over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. Then on the other side. On the upper part of your chest. Your belly. And finally your legs. And the feet out, sit back into the chair in this reclining posture. It's a posture that, I suppose, in a way maximizes the support we get from the chair. And so it's a good posture for just getting a sense for how our body responds to that very clear feeling of support. We're more likely to release tension, tightness in the body. We're more likely to get that feeling of our weight dropping into the chair. So that confidence in the support actually helps with the feeling of our center of gravity dropping down. So now, coming back up, and obviously the chair is still there, you're sitting on the chair. But again, legs, back, skeleton are the things that your body uses for its own support. And again, as we become more familiar with that and more confident in that, the release of tightness and stiffness, and significantly this dropping of our center of gravity, which in the case of the seated posture, essentially you feel more heavy in the chair. You're sinking in to your chair, but the upper part of your body feels quite open and almost light at times. So there's more space in your upper body for movement, whether that be movement like breathing and circulation, or the movements we're about to start. So just turning your head a little, very gently. And then shoulders. It's generally harder for us to maintain that softer quality, that processor releasing in movement. And there's various reasons for that. Going forward, movement is change, and any kind of change is difficult. So with that awareness of how we're moving and the awareness of the sort of movement of change can help. Hands down to your sides. Another thing that can disrupt the softness of the body in movement are just the habits of movement that we've developed over the years, and especially if you've had some kind of injury or condition that has made movement difficult. Maybe a long time ago, you probably found yourself unconsciously, quite possibly, adapting how you move to make that easier for you. And it's quite difficult to shed those habits. And again, awareness of that's what you're doing can be very important. And then winding your arms around. And then back the other way. And next check. Now, tilting your pelvis forwards. One of the things that can help to maintain the softness of the upper body, the fluidity of movement in your upper body in movement, is to think about how you're moving. And again, awareness is a key thing here, because in this exercise, if I do it from the side, my pelvis tilts forward. I get more of my weight in my legs. I push down through my legs, and that pushes my shoulders back. Another thing that happens here is as I go forwards, my hips are hanging back, and it's like somebody's taking hold of the top of my trousers. It is pulling me back in the chair. Those two things combine to bring your shoulders and your head upright without so much of a need to tighten up in our back, our neck, and our shoulders. What we often do is to come upright, we sort of do this. We pull up, we pull upwards, but actually it's a downward movement that brings our head up. So that doesn't mean that all the tightness and stiffness is just going to magically go away. apart from anything else, it's quite difficult to maintain this way of moving. But really, all Tai Chi works in this way, from the ground upwards. It's very, very easy to lose touch with your feet and your legs, especially when we come to the main body of exercises, where of course we're using the arms quite a lot. Turn just a little bit in the center of your body. So more of your weight going into one leg. So these exercises, these weight transfer exercises, help us to reframe how we quite often unconsciously consider our movements. We're rarely encouraged to really kind of analyze and to understand how we move. Turn the other way. And then circling all the way around, using the movement of your weight and the rolling movement in your pelvis. You draw your head and shoulders around in this small circle. And back in the other direction. So these are important exercises in helping us to change what is often a completely unconscious process of how we view our bodies, what we take into account, how we move, and so on and so forth. And come back to the center. And then just extending your legs to the foot, contracting, planting your foot, paying attention to where your foot goes. Heel goes down, then your toes. And then on the other side. And bring your feet parallel. So come back to the sitting position. Take a couple of breaths if that helps. Come into this position, feeling the strength that comes from your foundation of hips, legs, and feet, and from within your body. Your hands drop down. Turn them palm forwards, tilting forwards, and bird folds its wings. So the main effort, the sort of donkey work, as it were, is in your feet and your hips, the transfer of your weight. Not that nothing's happening in the upper part of your body. There's a lot happening in that. Begin to pay attention. but you're not trying to support yourself with your shoulders or the back. Arms hanging below your shoulders with this one. I can only do one arm to the back of the chair. Hang on doing both. And the main action on the part of your arms and upper body at this point is the rotation in your arms. But now, from the forward position, keep your hands facing backwards, push yourself back and let your hands follow. So you're just trailing your fingers through water. This is fisherman castanet. We'll do it with both sides, of course. And so by using our legs and hips and the transfer of our weight, we encourage that sense of movement, that flow within our body. One more time. And then drawing your hands over as though there's a ball underneath your arms. And again, a lot of the effort comes from the ground, from your feet. You push back, maintaining the angle of your arm, but not to begin with. No sense in which you're lifting your arm. You imagine the ball direct underneath there, and it's coming back. You don't want to lift your arm because you lose contact with the ball. These quieter movements give us a chance to get a sense for what else is going on in the body. If it's all in the arms, that tends to dominate our awareness. But as you come back, you can feel the expansion, belly, solar plexus, chest, like water filling the body up. And eventually, you get the feeling that is also beginning to push the arms up. One more time. And then as you come back up this time, turning your hands palm in, with your chest expanding, pushing your arms away, and then contracting, drawing them in. Expanding and contracting in the front of your body. The opposite way round in your back. One more time. This is pigeon spreads its wings, and then keeping your hands in front of your hip. Very similar in some ways, but just more subtle. Well, pushing wave. Then you come back, chest expands slightly, contraction across your back, and then as you go forwards, it's almost like your sternum, your breastbone, sinks backwards. One more time. Hands come down to just above your legs, loosely fisted. And this time, another rotating movement, which again, they pick up the very subtle resonances in this movement, in your shoulders, and your chest, and your upper back. One more time. Now, from here, open your fingers, go back to the pigeon spread its wings, full sequence doing one of each. Give us a chance to really appreciate the subtle changes from one movement to another. And again, they'll mostly be in the upper body, of course, because between hips and feet, there's this constant rhythmic flowing of your weight from hips to feet and back again. Back to pigeon spread its wings. Pushing away. Punch with both fists. And one more time. This time, open your fingers, turn your hands out, winding your arms out and back in. And again, press forwards. Notice as you go forwards, because your hips are dropping back, but your head is going forwards, there's a very gentle lengthening through your back and your spine. And that too becomes part of how you get drawn back. It's followed by a contraction. We begin to realize how movements like this, and really all movements, can be made with much more of the body than we often habitually make them with. Now turn your hands palm down, turn, go forwards, polishing the table. Again, feeling that extension through your back, and back to the center. Change direction. See if you can just get the sense that Not only is your back and spine extending and then contracting, but your arms too, from your shoulders down to your elbows to your wrists, your fingers. One last round. Now turn your hands palm up. This time an equal push between hips and feet. Pushing your hands up. Then maybe feeling that lengthening contraction in the back and spine. Now expansion will also hopefully give you the feeling of your hips and your feet being pushed down a little bit more. Hence the name of this exercise, which is rooting down. That downward movement really is fundamental to everything that we do. And it's also the movement that will help to, as we've noted, give you a posture that allows for a freedom of movement and to help to make you more stable when it comes to standing. One more of these. Change into the wild goose. Fingers pointing away from your shoulders. It may be that the image of the bird in flight is a useful one. And one of the things it's useful for, apart from the flow and the kind of the poetry of the image, is that if you think of a bird's feather, wave it in the air, it will bend slightly in response to the pressure of the air, but it won't break. One more time. And then easing forwards, heart in the clouds. So as we become more familiar with these exercises, particularly the ones that we do in every session, we begin to realize the depth that they carry and their potential for helping us to bring about long-term change. So, replacing the old habits of movement and posture with new habits. And again, this requires intention, awareness. And in particular, just aware of how you're making the movement, which aspects of that, which aspects of the way you're making the movements are actually useful and compatible with Tai Chi principles, and which are kind of hindering you a little bit. Now letting your hands drop down, feeling the weight of your arms pulling slightly on your shoulders, and then expanding on one side, pushing your elbow up. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Switch your attention to the opposite side, pushing up, pulling down. Do one more after this one. Bringing your hands around in front. Now feeling the lengthening through your back and your spine again. Hips still sinking back down, as well as having some of your weight in your feet if possible. Pushing in two directions. Do one more round of this. And then at the end of this one, turn slightly. When you come back to the front, bring your hands in, turn the other way. A few of these, that sense of releasing in to your center, expanding out from there. So again, with the expansion comes up a sense of a downward movement as well as sideways. So adding on the other two parts, so starting with the upward push, back lengthening and contracting. And then this broadening feeling as you turn in one direction. And then the other. And the sensations of movement, and the flow, the momentum, the energy, finishing with the sideways push. And now we have pushing in four directions. This will gradually train us to be more aware of those smaller movements within the body, those very subtle changes, but also to be able to enhance them, to amplify them, to intend them. So that gradually, as we become more familiar with the movements, we begin to feel them building from inside out rather than the other way around. One more round of this. In this position here, extend one foot, rest it on the heel, knees still a little bit bent. Turn the fingers forwards, palms up, sink towards as though you're scooping water up in your arms. Again, dropping your hips back, not straining in your shoulders, as though you're throwing the water back over your head. This is scooping the sea and looking at the sky. And again, I'm going to show you from the side. I should just about be able to use both arms, I think. And from this position, I feel the pull here. I said, you know, it feels like somebody's pulling you back into the chair, but actually it's the pull of gravity. So to come back to the upright position, if we're aware enough, we can begin to use gravity. We can use the very thing that would have pulled us forwards and over, causes us to strain, to do the opposite effect. One more time. And then grasping the tiger's ears, this time your head going forwards and up, lengthening through your spine. For those of you familiar with the movements, I exaggerate slightly as I go forward, see what my arms are doing. And then the chest closes. So there's elements in this that are very similar to the earlier exercise. Bird folds its wings. Push from the ground, of course, a rise in movement, a rise in energy, but also this very subtle movement in chest and upper back, the chest opening and then contracting, all part of the movement. Changing over. Scooping the sea and looking at the sky. So all these things combine to give us this sense of our whole body moving as one unit and the flow of energy through our whole body as one unit. So the two are the same thing, of course. One more time. And then grasping the tiger's ears. So with repetition of the movements, we're able to take our attention and our intention deeper within our bodies. We get this overlapping, this combining, this harmonization of the mechanics of the movement, the body, the flow of the movement, the energy, and our awareness and intention all beginning to work together. And then coming back to the sitting position. Our starting point, remember, was just in the sitting position to recognize how we're being supported, that there is support there. That's an encouragement to release tightness in and of itself. But it also brings our attention into our body and into those key areas of the body and those key processes in the body. Something we're going to come back to in the standing, but for now, just rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. and over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. And the other side. Upper part of your chest. Then your belly. And finally the legs. And then pushing your heels up. And circling around. And back the other way. Okay, and then coming to standing. So I'm going to move my chair out of the way, but it can be quite useful and interesting to have the chair next to you for support, maybe be next to a wall or something like that. This is awkward to do the teaching, really, when too much clutter surrounding me. So we're going to think about how we're supported. More significant, really, than it is in the chair here is your alignment with the pull of gravity. If I were to get, say, this pole, and if I could, I mean, it would be almost impossible because it's not quite even, and the floor is probably not quite even. But in theory, there's a place that I could position it in where it wouldn't do this. In theory. In practice, it's a lot harder to get to. What we would actually do with this, if we wanted the pole in our garden for some reason or another, is we'd dig a hole, we'd push the end of the pole in to the hole. Essentially, would root the pole down. We might even do what we might do with a tent, which is to put guy ropes on it to support it. What we try to do standing is pretty much the same. We allow our center of gravity to drop down. You can think of, say, for instance, your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments as being like the guy ropes. We want to find that alignment with the pull of gravity. And then we begin to realize our legs will support us. Our back will support the upper body. And once again, as they start to take effect and we get that feeling of releasing that fluidity in the soft tissue of the upper body, we become more aware of this support from within. So having your feet directly below your hips, not too close together, and just rocking your weight forwards and backwards. Again, if I take the pole, just to illustrate, I'm pivoting from my ankles, and this is what's happening. And obviously, if I go too far, that's what's going to happen. So we try and moderate the movement. And so I'm taking this pole, and I'm just trying to see, is there a place where, by moving it forwards, moving it around, and seeing if I can get a place where it will stand up, which I'm not going to, as I say, it's very difficult. So gradually letting your body come to rest. And then making sure that you can just let your hips release, that release of the tightening. And this is where, if you put your hand on the wall, for instance, you've got a little bit of extra security. It's hard to release that tightness if you think that you need it. So this is a process of reassessing how we're standing and gaining some confidence in the new way. And we just let our hips drop back, and that begins the process of our center of gravity dropping. And it also means that if we're leaning over slightly, as in the chair, when our hips drop back, our head and shoulders come upright without the need to sort of stiffen up. And so we keep that sense of being rooted. And then Letting your hips drop down, bring your hands around and pushing up and sinking down, rooting down. Letting your center of gravity drop. Try to keep your pelvis level while you do this. And in particular, noting, feeling in your hips and lower back, buttocks, gravity pulling downwards. And if you can remember, it was useful to you, those exercises in releasing tightness. You can make use of those. Body expanding and contracting. Just beginning to feel that flow of movement within your body. This time, turning your hands out. As you sink down more, because of the change in angle, particularly in your legs, you may feel that the pelvis naturally tucks under a little. So there are some very subtle things happening, particularly in the center of your body, working that whole area of the center of your body, hips and pelvis, lower back. And then parting the clouds. One more time. Then 1 foot forwards, keeping the width of your step. And beginning once again to transfer your weight. This time in the upright position, keeping your shoulders in line with your hips. Our standard walking makes use of it quite often of our shoulders tilting forwards, but it often does so at the expense of what's required in our legs. So this is the reverse of that. Try and leave the upper body just resting on our hips and maybe recognizing slight changes, but really the effort, the strength of the movement comes from our legs. It comes from this sinking down. If I exaggerate, this really is exaggerated. This happens. I sink down, and it's like the leg springs to push me forwards, and the same thing going backwards. So the dropping of our weight isn't just about remaining stable. It's the downward movement that leads to the upward movement that begins to move us. It may be that in ordinary walking, you would continue to use your shoulders a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. But as long as we don't do so at the expense of what's happening in our legs. And then start to raise your toes when you go back, front toes lift up. When you go forwards, back heel rises, and more of the weight goes into the leg until you can get to a point where you can bring your foot in, step back. Sinking your weight down in the supporting leg. Try and remember that fluid feeling, softening the soft tissue, particularly in the upper part of your body, eventually in your legs as well, but particularly feeling that your back is supporting you, feeling that your skeleton is supporting you. And then on the other side, transferring your weight. Raising your toes and your heel. Try not to tilt the pelvis. We're not going for speed or momentum or strength in this. Stepping in. You could argue that what we're doing here is practicing what we miss in ordinary walking. And then forwards or backwards, taking a few steps through. Once again, we're trying to introduce different habits of movement to be less reliant on those old habits. And then go back. Have your right foot forwards to mirror my movement. The standing version of fisherman casting net. So the problem we have is that we're very easily absorbed in our attention by the upper part of the body. And so one of the habits, one of the qualities that we train to hardwire into our bodies, into our awareness, is a constant awareness of what is happening in our lower body, feet to hips. Not that we want to ignore the upper body. This time, as you come back, turn your body. So now drawing your arms across. Turning. Your arms swing through the curve until this time, as you swing through, you can just bring your arms over in a figure of 8 movement down towards your hips as you move your weight back, and then up and forwards towards the front hip as you move your weight forward. So figure of 8 in the air, or if you prefer, think of it as the infinity sign you find in physics and mathematics. Soften your shoulders so you're not straining and pulling your upper body out of line. With that familiar quality of movement, that fluidity of movement, which we would lose if we didn't have that alignment. So now, try that with your left foot forwards. Fisherman cast a net. Then do a little turn. Building that through the expansion of the body into the figure of 8 movement. feet parallel again, slightly turned out, and doing this a little bit from side to side. You see I've got the wall behind me, so again, this is something that you can do like so close to the wall, and again, that can give you a little bit of confidence, because now what I want you to do is go into your left, and as you raise your arms up, bring your right foot in, step out to the side again, go across into the right, a little bit of a turn here. And you may find you're able to just raise your knee. So you could be by a table, could be in front of a wall as I am, you could have the chair there. And then if you feel comfortable with this, again, you can go forwards or backwards. You could start to walk away from the chair. Just recognizing again what's supporting you, your legs, your back, your skeleton, and what allows for that lovely characteristic flow of the movement. It's not something that we impose on the body, it's something that comes out of the body when it's comfortable. I'm going to change direction. One more time. And bring your feet parallel. Good, now go back to your chair. So once again, the starting point for all of that was awareness, an awareness of posture, an awareness of structure, an awareness of how the body is supported, and how that allows us to get things like the rooting down and so on and so forth. There's various elements that come into this: the root, the alignment, the awareness that we bring to this, the discovery almost of how we can be supported without strain, and they all feed in to the same place. And in the final exercise, Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain, we'll sort of come back to that. So letting your hands drop down, pushing out, and you may find you stiffen up, but once again, just allowing your shoulders to soften, elbows to drop a little bit, bringing your hands around so they're holding the ball here, and then inwards and downwards. Embracing Tiger, returning to the mountain. Feeling the muscles of your back and sides softening. Confident that the spine and your rib cage maintain your structure from within without the need for hardening, tightening. Feeling your hips sinking back, supporting the raising of your head. The center of gravity dropping down through the chair. There's no need, or taking away some of the need for straining in your shoulders and back and arms. Just aware of that lovely fluidity of movement. Trying to just recognize any areas that stiffen up and see if you can get that feeling of releasing, letting go. One more time. and rest. Just open that. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for joining in. Hope that was useful too. So, bye for now and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much.